Connecting. Great. Then, Odysseus, I'll let you take over from here.
Hi guys, I'm Odysseus. Nice to meet you, first of all, and thanks for having me as well. So I was thinking of going with some segments that I have thought, if you also agree with this, so we have the conversation like a bit more organized. I will also have my time here. So wait a second. Um, so the first segment I was thinking of be like an introduction of you, so the audience can hear from you who you are, your experience, your ambitions and hopes of becoming a president of the Young European Federalists. Then we're going to more of the political goals of how you're viewing also your presidency and how you're going to achieve these goals. Sorry, excuse me. And then we're going to the future of Jeff under you. So yeah, and the fourth segment it would be like a last call, let's say. How you understand, like you have a small message that you can address to the audience, and then we can proceed with the questions of public. If that's okay for you, we can start. Super. So I will. The questions will be for both of you, so you won't have to wait for one or another. So yeah, I'm starting. I want you. We want you to know what's your like who you are, how you get to the Young European Federalists, and how are you going to create an alternative vision for the next day. It's like complex question, but you can also be more strictly to the first one for the first leg, so people can recognize you and understand you. I think I can give the floor to Alexian if Moritz is okay. Okay, great. Alexian, who are you?
Good evening. Thank you, Odysseus. How much time do I have? No, you're muted.
So you have 3 minutes. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for the first segments, and then yeah, I'll start the time when you start speaking.
Sure. You asked us, who are we? And I'm going to return the question actually. Who am I? Or maybe someone like you. You all here today. I'm a young European. I once believed that the EU was distant because I come from Oléron, a small island in France on the Atlantic coast. And Jeff France last year, sorry, I'm hearing interferences. Jeff France last year managed to reach out to the island, but I was already involved in Jeff. I've been active since 2019. I'm 26 and I started with Leading Europe at school in for Sciences Po Paris. And then I became, in 2020, Le Taurillon podcast head. I joined Jeff UK across the channel. In 2020, I became chair of Jeff London and then international officer. Since 2023, I actually worked for Jeff Europe. I'm serving as a European board member and then vice president. So from street actions from Paris, London, or Copenhagen, even the first time I heard about Jeff, I am committed to advocate with commissioners in Brussels, but also to advocate towards federalism to young people like us. And I believe this is Jeff's superpower. I think that a superpower we share is that we see how federalism transforms idealism into action. And this is what I would like you to remember today. We promote action because this is our way to have hope. And because my deep conviction is that Europe must reach every young person and not just those who have a Europe house nearby. I'm curious, caring, and bold federalist. I'm convinced that listening is actually the first step to be a leader. So over the last month, I've consulted all Jeff sections from, as I say, Lisbon to Tbilisi to build a roadmap that I just shared today. Federalism starts with a good coffee and a good conversation. But yes, and then what? Why do you want to believe that I offer a vision for federalism that you'd like to follow? Maybe I can go back to the basics and share a Spinelli quote. All young people choose, implicitly or explicitly, some political outlook because the young people help thinking about the future, about themselves and about others. So federalism for me is not just a structure, it's a way to act, to make things concrete, to include and to trust. Because as federalists, we are not really here to admire problems, to contemplate them. We are here to design solutions. And tonight, I hope to share with you my 3 political priorities, political ideas, and campaigns. But maybe I should stop here for the round of introduction and also let Moritz introduce himself.
Okay, I think now you can hear me, no? Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Moritz. I'm 27. I come from Germany, specifically from Heidelberg, which is like 1 hour south of Frankfurt in the southwest. But actually, I've lived in many different places all over Europe in the last few years. Most recently, I lived in Tallinn in Estonia, where I graduated from my master's in e-governance. And yes, now actually I'm back in Brussels. I've moved back 2 days ago. And let me tell you maybe a little bit about myself. I have a professional background, mostly in political communications, working for different foundations, such as the European Movement in Germany, but also in institutions like the European Parliament more recently. And there I've really focused on campaigning and on, yeah, also collaborating with the media. This is why I also work as a podcast producer. I do that for almost 4 years now as a freelancer, which has given me also a lot of contacts with interesting people because I work with the Jacques Delors Center. And this is mostly podcasts on European integration. So I've actually come in touch with many interesting and good contacts in this European bubble, let's say. But maybe to tell you a bit more how I actually got into JEF. This was during the pandemic. I remember still 2020, and I joined because of the magazine, the German version of TNF, the New Federalist. I joined because there were the right-wing attacks in Halle and Hanau in Germany at the time, which showed me that there's so much hate out there. And in a way, I felt compelled to do something. I felt the need to somehow speak up, and I thought, okay, why not write? This is literally what I can do. And I checked again, like my publications on the website, and the first thing I ever published was a European perspective on right-wing extremism in Europe, because that was really something where I thought, okay, we really have to put this topic in the spotlight. And unfortunately, today in 2025, we're still talking about the same problems. We're still talking about hate and anger and fear that is prevalent in our societies, in our countries. And quite frankly, for me, federalism has over the years become an answer to these huge challenges. And it is, unfortunately, in the political debates that we have at the moment, very rare that politicians and stakeholders talk about federalism. Federalism is something that is either marked as something that's overly bureaucratic, for example, in the German context, where we talk about the different levels competing, or it is misunderstood as something that opposes. So we really need to find a way to see federalism in this positive spirit again, and this is why I'm running to become JEF president for the next 2 years.
Yes. Thank you, guys. So I kept some notes, and I wanted to ask you, what did you learn from the EU countries that you lived? Is this something that lived within you, and now as a candidate you want to for the people to know, are Europeans different with each other? What are the similarities, and how are you going to combine this diversity, differences amongst us in your presidency? So I don't know if you want to keep this kind of round, Alexian or Moritz. Is this? Do you want to go to Moritz now, Alexian? Are you okay? Okay, great. Moritz, you have the floor.
Yes, I mean, for me, it's mostly that living in the Baltics, you realize that the EU is not only like something that has been always there, but it's something that is our life guarantee. Living next to a country that borders Russia, living in a country that is next to Russia, means that this threat of war is imminent. And the threat is very much visible in everyday life. Because, I mean, even more recently, last week, we saw fighter jets, Russian ones, in the airspace in Poland. There was violations in Lithuania, in Estonia, and this is a method, right? So when you're in the Baltic countries, you realize that the EU is the security guarantee. Because in, let's say, Germany, where I'm from, we have become used to the idea of the EU being there. We don't even question it. We really think that, and then we use the EU as a scapegoat, right? We say, oh, now there's like plastic, like the plastic bottles have the lid attached now. Oh, stupid Brussels, like this is what they focus on. But what we forget is that there's so many things where we need the EU, and we're also candidate countries. I've been to Albania a few months ago, where you can see that there's so much that the EU does, which other countries do not profit from yet. And this is why Europe looks very differently depending on where you stand. And I would also add, it looks terribly bad from some places where you are. The image of Europe is unfortunately not so great. But one thing that gives me hope in Estonia, the image of Europe is still very great, and I think we need to advance this.
I have lived in a foreign country outside of the EU before actually joining Jeff. I grew up in Morocco and I was from 13 to 17 years old and I didn't know that the EU existed. I knew that I was French. I had the symbol on the passport, but it didn't mean something concretely until higher education. I'd like for you to remember that because I think that's one of the greatest obstacle, the lack of education, civic education about the EU in all countries. I was in the French high school, so I could have learned about the EU, especially our founding roles. I didn't. And so you asked us, what did we learn from living in different countries? Well, after living in France, in Sweden, and in the UK, I can first make or state a simple fact. In all of these countries, the youth is extremely far away from the EU or hyper-connected in a form of we are connected to the EU if we have parents involved in politics or if we study European affairs. And there's no difference, there's no nuance. The second thing I see is that, especially being chair of Jeff London and international officer of Jeff UK during Brexit, I was there in 2020, 2021, I could see the power of misinformation in fueling negative images, just like what Moritz said. To counter that, I decided, with the help of Jeff France and then Jeff UK, to create a podcast series which was centered about your life and how the EU intervenes in your life, and you know it or not. So I decided to go back on our own personal stories to lead them towards the future that Jeff advocates for, a federalist solution to solve our concrete generational crisis, such as climate change, the security issues, or just simply the democratic deficit and lack of voting turnout. If we have hope, if we have federalist solutions, then usually young people are more convinced by our message. These are the top three ideas I got from living in these different countries. But what above all I learned is that rising Euroscepticism is not something that we cannot do anything about. It can be prevented. The example of Finland shows it. In the recent 2024 European elections, the far right actually lost some seats in the parliament, and basically more favor or more support was granted to the EU. My ideal Europe is not an EU that counts in different youth. That's why Jeff exists. That's one of the motivations I'm running as president. The second is to bring these federalist solutions to fight Euroscepticism. But I believe that in further questions, we can delve into that at least deeper.
Thank you so much for your answers. I will go to the political goals now because the time is running out. So, because it's a broad spectrum, but I will go back afterwards to some of the podcasts that you are making, and because I have some questions to ask. So yeah, you both said that we're living in different and difficult times geopolitically in the EU as well. There is a harsh criticism from United States, from Russia, of course, from we live in dangerous times. I wanted to I wanted to ask you how are you going to define the main problems that are being occurred right now, and what is the alternative vision that you're offering from the previous presidency? So the main question is this: in order not to have two legs, what is the alternative vision that you are proposing in order for the members to vote for you? Alexian, you have the floor. It will be 3 minutes. So when I do the hand or something like that, you will have 30 seconds. Okay? When I stop the hand, you will not have time. So, Alexian, the question I repeat for everyone to hear: what is your alternative vision that you're offering from the previous presidency, and why the members should vote you? Alexian.
Didn't you also ask us about what political hot topics we want to raise also? Or did I misunderstand the question?
I will keep the political goals afterwards.
Okay.
I want you to, yeah. So yeah, so the alternative vision, yeah.
I will not shy away from the fact that I've been serving Jeff Europe for the past 2 years. I have a story in Jeff, but I also have a vision for Jeff. So that's why I'm humbly asking for all sections support. And that's why I also decided to, for the past 5 months, consult all sections of Jeff Europe to ask them about their priorities, their hopes, and their frustrations with this current mandate. So I've designed a roadmap that is fully co-constructed and reflect broad consensus. We will talk about activities and political priorities later on, but this is something I would like to establish because I am both a convinced, ambitious, and bold federalist, but I'm also basically I would like to embody a form of change. I like to practice self-reflection, and calling sections for the past 5 months have been an amazing exercise to identify what went wrong and how we came up with lack of trust that we currently have or the gap of information between Jeff Europe and sections. I cannot give you all details and all ideas I thought about and because of time constraint. But first, after my mandate should I be elected as Jeff president, I would like us to be stronger, smarter, and more united, because I would like to share that I would be an empathetic leader that believes also in horizontal discussions and powers. That's why the president would be using communication to report one action they did per week and invite the rest of the board to do so. I would like to use WhatsApp more, and my door or my phone will always be open. That being said, after 2 years of my mandate, I would also like Jeff Europe to be more recognized as a credible political force, and third achievement, to have more than 10,000 members, so to grow from that current mandate, and to make sure that our sections, especially non-EU sections, are integrated in the federalist training we provide, or given a stronger voice. That's why I would like to open up statutory reforms, notably about the number of EB members and number of delegates, to take into account that, yes, one of my goals is also to keep increasing the number of Jeff sections, but also to allow them to reach a critical mass and to have more than 50 members. I would like us to remember, and that will be my final words, that throughout my leadership and also the inspiration I hope to bring, Jeff will be a community that learns and grows together, where mentorship and training are second nature, and we are not just a political community.
Then I can continue. I would like to emphasize that Jeff Europe exists because the sections exist, and Jeff Europe exists because each and every individual member of you that is listening also right now puts in the work every week to do something for Jeff, and that are very, very different things. Some organize like evenings, political debates in a bar. Some organize demonstrations, some organize discussions with policymakers, some organize international seminars. And in the end, Jeff Europe should be there to support each and every single activist so that they are able to carry out their work, so that they have their finances in order to basically establish a community of like-minded individuals. And I think for me, this is actually the beauty of Jeff, that we can disagree politically on the means to get somewhere, but in the evening we can still, and we all agree on this big idea of that we need a united and democratic Europe. The means how to improve unity and democracy and rule of law in the EU, maybe we disagree on that, especially also on the economy. And for me, this non-partisanship is actually the strength of our movement. And we really, really have to focus on keeping this strength and not being, yeah, like there's a lot of division also. There's a lot of unfortunate trends. And in my alternative vision for Jeff, we leave aside these internal debates, these internal power struggles, because in the end, what Jeff Europe is an umbrella organization. And if we really take the name federalism seriously, it means that we share power, and that we are a bottom-up movement where ideas from the ground reach the top, and I mean also the other way around in coordination with all different levels. That's why I don't see Jeff Europe right now leading by example. There's actually many things that were quite frustrating, were coming from the point of the sections. And I would really like to have a better coordination, basically, between FC, EB, and the sections. And maybe to also tell you that this is something that I didn't say in the beginning. I'm right now the international officer of Jeff Germany for 1 year in the board and also vice president. So I have experience in leading a big Jeff section that is also very much rooted in this federalist principles, because yeah, we have more than 60 regional sections in the end.
Thank you both. Let's go to the political goals. And we've seen this for New Year strategy. And I think this is a big debate that is going on also in the internal of the Jeff and also in these, I don't know, as candidates within you. Uh, you have five main areas, and I wanted to ask you which are the areas that you need to focus more in order to achieve your goals. Do all the areas have an equal treatment, or there are some areas from the 4-year strategy that needs to be more focused or even reformed? The floor has Moritz.
Thanks. I think one of the main things that in the 4-year strategy that's also mentioned is the internal and external advocacy part. To be honest, from the very first beginning, I wasn't so sure what internal advocacy should mean. That we need to strengthen our external advocacy, I also see that, and I share that concern. That is also my promise that if I get elected as Jeff Euro president, I will be here in Brussels. I want to work full time for Jeff, and I want to do this advocacy work, because actually right now we see that this intergovernmentalist agenda, that the nation states dictate what the EU is going to do. We see it with the multi-financial framework, but in many other policy domains, this Jeff advocacy work is really needed. And this is really my promise, to use my network and use this in Brussels. So I agree very much with this first point in the 4-year strategy. All the other points are also very relevant. We need to increase our membership. We also need to make a bit like the internal procedures more clear. But because you mentioned the 4-year strategy, there's one point that was very much that's like, it was discussed in the FC in Sofia. And actually back then I remember that Dvir came up with the idea and he told me about it. And since then, like, I'm really pushing for this. We need to find a balance on how we can move from like our political resolutions to the reality, because the work that we do in the political resolutions is amazing. And we have a lot of great things in these resolutions, on climate change, on social policy in Europe, on global cooperation in economic terms. But then what I think we are currently missing a little bit is this translation of like theory into practice. So what we wrote in this 4-year strategy was to establish a joint team for each resolution that is written, where we actually focus on the implementation. For example, there was one resolution last year on Russian disinformation and Russian, in general, violence towards Europe. And we could, for example, there in this implementation plan say, okay, we want to engage more with Russian dissidents in a structured dialogue. We want to empower TNF, the New Federalist, and the media network, maybe to do a campaign together on showing how Russian disinformation works. And then also saying, okay, we will do an event online, just to follow up, to have a clear structure from what we want politically to what we also do politically. And yes, this 4-year strategy will be a guiding document for the next 2 years for me.
To complement, I had the chance to learn from Kati Sista, current board member, and to work with her on the 4-year strategy. So the methodology of consulting all sections also came from the methodology we followed for the 4-year strategy, where we had brainstorms with all the network. So it was kind of natural for me to connect this exercise we did for the 4-year strategy to the one I did for preparing the presidency. After a couple of sections asked me if I would consider running, I consider that Jeff Euro presidency requires some key skills. So I wondered if I was good enough for external representation, but as well as being an inspiration also internally and in all humbleness, if also I would be a good manager, because a president has different hats. So with that hats in mind, I also identified some 3 political priorities that are connected to, as Moritz said, internal and external advocacy. I think that Euroscepticism, and mark my words, I don't only talk about far right, but I talk about Euroscepticism and misinformation, is the first political priority I'd like our work in the upcoming 2 years to focus on. The second is democracy and freedoms. And in this roadmap, I have suggested that we actually consult again all sections to make a state of their democracy, to show that sadly, even democracy in long established countries or democracy which seem to be sound and firm are still being under pressure right now. With these arguments, then we can move to also the third political priority. After establishing fact sheets, it is extremely easy then to advocate for the future EU we want. And the third priority is enlargement and treaty change. With the same exercise of drafting the fact sheet about with non-EU sections, what would be their interest in joining the EU versus what could be for them, what they could bring to the table, I think that Jeff would be really strong in its advocacy. Connected to that, I have activities, 3 ideas of activities in mind. The first is thinking federalism concretely, thinking federalism in practice, with a year-long Federalist Academy with a culminating point, a summer university connected to already all the Federalist forums taking place in sections, in which I commend them for this tremendous work. The second activity, and I'd be happy to tell you a bit more then, is reclaiming the narrative political campaign. Remember, a president should be the external face. This narrative would indicate what us federalists have to say to counteract Eurosceptic narratives, but it would be derived from a political consultation to transform our political platform, a natural consequence of our 4-year strategy. Lastly, faces and experiences of Jeff to put capacity building at the heart of our activities, because all in all, I am a president focused of capacity building and fighting Euroscepticism.
Thank you. So you both mentioned as main problems of European Union and European Union. You, Alexian, Euroscepticism, and you, Moritz, far right on the rise. And if I'm mistaken, please correct me right now. How are you going to combat these challenges? What's your plan on this? And Alexian, you have the floor, because Moritz, you spoke first on the other question.
I will be short, but I think that it's what I was already explaining, what I would strive to put in place as a president. Fighting Euroscepticism needs for us to know what we are facing. And what I like about federalism is that federalism is an answer to 37 different political contexts, where political cultures and also the degree of external influence and their impacts on mediatic scenes are diverging and different. So a president should know all of its sections' context, and a president should also know that a one-size-fits-all solution doesn't work. Moritz was talking about collaborating with sections. That's the point. Jeff Europe, I agree with him, has a coordinating role. We've done that in the previous mandate with Your Hope, and we do it regularly with Democracy Under Pressure and Don't Touch My Schengen, to shed light on national initiatives, but also to coordinate and put forward a common manifesto. In a sense, this is the summary of Reclaim the Narrative. In 2026, to help delegates also to make up their mind, I have come up with a concrete roadmap on how to do Reclaim the Narrative to fight Euroscepticism. First, together internally as Jeffers, we would be consulted in person and online through regional debates as to what are the main statements Eurosceptic parties say in the countries. By that, I mean that in Romania, you have your skeptic statements in even in center-right parties, whereas in France, you have them in far-right and far-left parties. Know your enemy. Second stage, to create together our federalist answers, and also to acknowledge that we should not shame those who vote for Eurosceptic parties, but we should shame the leaders who consciously manipulate voters and citizens. First stage, 2027. Here we are on the streets, on the social media landscape. We clearly would say, based on this consultation and identified priorities, replicating your hope methodology, this is what Eurosceptics say. This is what us federalists argue. This would be how would originally combat Eurosceptics, but by doing so with a strong, good base of knowledge.
Okay, I can go. All right. For me, it's very interesting that you talk about Euroscepticism because, in a way, Euroscepticism for me is not the right word. The right word for me is right-wing extremism is on the rise. Of course, there's also Eurosceptics on the left, but I don't think these are the problem at the moment. I am also skeptical of the EU in many ways. There's migration policy of the EU. There is the common foreign policy. There's even the policy on agriculture, where I'm very skeptic that this can work. And to be very honest, I think the big challenges right now that we have is racism, is Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and all these huge challenges, these that are systemic in our societies, they are used and deliberately used by the extreme right. That they are against Europe or against the EU is just like a bit of a side effect in a way. What I'm actually very scared about is that through this realization that, okay, we need Europe because economically we've grown so much together, that there will be some sort of European nationalism at some point. And we've seen that with the example of Jeff Lithuania, that the ideological basis for this is already there. We see it when we go online, on X, on Instagram. There's all these accounts that, at least from my perspective, started as like accounts that really celebrate Europe and the European Union, but have increasingly become more right-wing, defining Europe vis-a-vis someone else. And that's what I mean when I say that my Europe is open and collaborative. I mean that we in Europe need to work together with people from all other continents because we're not better than anyone else. We're all just humans in the end. And I know that Euroscepticism, what you say, is a challenge, but being skeptic of the EU as such is maybe not the worst start. But I know that this is not your point. Your point is that we need to educate also more. And that's something that I share with you. We need to educate and we need to tell people how our political systems work. But I would also say that just education alone, especially about like education on how the institutions function, it will not solve everything, because in the end, it's about more than just like understanding how different institutions work, but it's about the narrative and it's about the values in the end. So my promise is there's a clear red line and we cannot stop fighting the extreme right.
Thank you. Alexian, maybe you want to answer to Moritz, or do you want to pass to another question?
I'd like to say that I'm happy that we disagree. This is exactly the feeling of constructivism. It's also something I'd like to remind here. We are not Euro, where we completely contemplate Europe. We are not European indifferent. I'm concerned when I'm hearing a candidate saying that they are Eurosceptic in a form. I think that we should rather be constructive, and this is what I suggest with Reclaim the Narrative, where we put forward our federalist messages. But maybe it's an occasion also for members to choose the side they are on, leaning towards fighting Euroscepticism at large by providing information and countering misinformation, or having maybe more ideological discussions.
Or as you want to answer, and that would be the end of it. So or you can pass on another question. But if you answer, you have around 20 seconds. So
Yes, just to say that like there's a lot that can be put into this ideological debate. But my worries are that what we are seeing already, like the deterioration of free movement through Schengen, the increasing pressure on this community approach at European level, these are all things. And then, of course, we have the war in Ukraine that's going on for 4 years. Like, we really see that Europe is crumbling. There's huge challenges. And in these cracks, all these right-wing people, they really fill and increasingly dominate these gaps. And I'm really just scared that at some
please
point our
conclude.
Europe is going to explode through that. So we have to be very cautious right now.
Thank you. So if you're fine with that, we can move on to another question. We talked about a bit of introduction. You talked about that you both worked in NGOs and you have the experience with Jeff. And around the same time, let's say 2019, 2020, you married and Alexian 2019. You both worked as international in the international office. You were like uh, international stuff. So I want to ask you how this background, these many positions, can be attributed to the candidacy and as your president. And another question that you can take half of it and half of it. How, in a crisis moment in your past occupation, did you manage? And are you going to follow the same path as you did back then, or are you going to change methods in order to prevent but also to face crisis? So I think because I think Alexian is not first, or if you Alexian is first, I think, right? So she can go. If I'm mistaken, I'm sorry.
Yes. Indeed, we were both international officers. What I can bring as an added value is that I was also a member of a EU section and non-EU sections, and I'm still a member of Jeff UK and Jeff France. These sections have changed, and I've had pleasure to see them grow and evolve in different projects across the years, and especially from the European perspective, where one of the second added value I could mention for my profile is that for the past 2 years, I've been put in the shoes of a leader to have to make decisions, to lead pan-European campaigns, and also to make sure that we articulate well the work of the Secretariat and the work of the EBNFC. I would like to take a short moment to acknowledge also the fact that Secretariat members are not simply executioners. They have also some amazing ideas, and I have also been in touch with them for a 4-year strategy or for this roadmap, especially on the financial and management side. It's not the core of this question, but it's definitely something that I could take from my experience of being a Jeffer at a national level and a Jeffer at the European level. I say that I would also like to emphasize that when we have crisis, and I guess that one of the common examples that are going to be quoted is the operating ground crisis. I'm the first one to have acknowledged in front of sections during the consultation that we were too slow to communicate what happened, because we wanted to give time to the secretary to understand what happened, but also to come up with sections with a plan. So this is my simple words. As a president, if a future crisis happens, I would strive to answer faster to be more transparent, first towards VFC members and then shortly after towards all sections. But I would like also to say that I will be working extremely fast to come up with a solution. And in this case of this mandate, I'm a grant writer on the side when I'm not doing Jeff. I have contributed to supporting Christelle and Brigitta when writing the operating grant we successfully secured. The last thing I'd like to put forward is that we need to have trust as president. This is something I have acquired with some Jeffers across 6 years, but it's something I'd like to strive to enhance and improve. That's why I'm suggesting to open up an informal council of presidents of national sections and Jeff with a physical meeting also, on top of the physical meetings I could have with the FC, so that communication and transparency are not just done in the air, they are actually carried out and done in person.
Right. Following up on what was said, you asked first about also our professional past and what we learned and what skills, I guess, we acquired there. And I think for me, one of the best things that I bring also into this possible position is the contacts into the political landscape, but especially in the media world, because especially working in different media rooms, I know I have my contacts there, and I really hope to increase also the visibility of Jeff through that. Of course, I also bring some social media skills and project writing skills, but I'm not going to go into that so much because you asked about the crisis. And crisis actually made me think, okay, what was the biggest crisis in the last year? And I cannot stop thinking also today about the situation in Gaza. It's a situation where we as humanity have politically failed. And also we in Jeff have struggled to come to a position where we all agree. We don't need to come to a position where we all agree. And everyone who was in Tartu knows that these discussions were really rough and they were really divisive for the whole movement. I think, though, that only because the world around us is crazy and that it's hard to have some political debates, it's still necessary to still have them. It's not an excuse not to have political debates, even if the topic is very sensitive. And I think that with the Federalist Peace Forum that we did with Jeff Italy, also Jeff Germany, and with the help with Jeff Europe, we showed that actually, even if we disagree a little bit on the political means or simply on the question that is also like who started, I mean, we will never answer this probably, but what we can do is look ahead. Like, what can we do now to improve the situation for people in the West Bank, in Israel, in Gaza? So I'm actually super happy that out of this crisis moment, and I want to remind that this crisis is far from over, this so-called peace deal is not bringing peace so far, because also what federalism teaches us, peace is not the absence of war, it's making institutions and building institutions that make war impossible. And unfortunately, these institutions have not been built yet, but I guess it will be our challenge also for the next 2 years to keep building these institutions.
Great, thank you. I'm going to the more of the framework of the Jeff, if that's okay for you. Let's talk about the political commissions and task forces of the next day. So I will start with Moritz now. So what should be the political commissions and task forces or working groups for the mandate? Why is this a choice of yours? And yeah, this is the question.
So first of all, I'm very happy that both Cyprien from France and Consti from Germany, with whom I've worked a lot also in the last year, are putting forward their candidacy to form a task force on fighting the extreme right. And I put all my support behind this initiative, and I would really like to see it. In Germany, we already have this task force, but I think it makes much more sense to lift this, so to say, to the European level, and to have it kind of as like a small think tank within Jeff, where we can explore the strategies of far-right parties in different countries and find solutions that work together for all of us. Secondly, I would, of course, like to continue the work, what I just said, with the Federalist Peace Forum, and institutionalize it in a way with a task force. And I know that with Federico and Vera, I have two friends on my side for that, that could be led by EB and FC. Of course, we will need to continue doing the topical work. And that means that also Task Force 1, a Political Commission 1, 2, and 3 need to remain. But I would like to tell to anyone who's considering being in the FC in the next mandate that this task should not only be like writing the resolution. If there's anyone who wants to do more than that, like exploring events together with the EB, like my door will always be open, and I'm always happy to look what can we do more than this traditional core work of writing resolutions. And I mean, I already said before, with the priorities also laid out in the 4-year strategy, how we can operationalize it a bit better. And then capacity building has to remain a core of the organization. We need to strengthen like the skills of our activists on the ground. How do I set up a bank account if I establish a new section? How do I actually get people to show up for a demonstration? How do I make a good online campaign? All these things are the needs of our activists, and I think this should be done through the capacity building seminars. And I think for these capacity building seminars, we should connect them very well to the campaigns that we have. Don't touch my Schengen, democracy under pressure, because it's always easier to talk about like the skills and like strategies to do something when you have a concrete example. I also proposed already in my letter that I would like to expand the scope a little bit of the Civic Education Task Force, because we already have like the Federalist Academies in many countries, like Ventotene Seminar, the Wachenburg Academy that we did the first time in Germany this year. And I would really like the new Task for Civic Education to focus on also these Federalist Academies and how other sections can start and have the texts ready and the materials to start their own Federalist Academies. And I think now my time's up.
I would like to first say that, of course, I came up with some proposals, but I respect how things are structured as per our statutes. So these are only suggestions, and I'm in touch with candidates to the FC Presidium. But of course, the final organization of political commissions and task forces or even the FC structure is in their hands, and I will not substitute myself as per the principle of horizontal collaboration that I advocate as a leader and a president. I think that, same as Moritz, I agree with the fact that PCs should remain. And in line with the political priorities I mentioned for the mandate, I'd love for the PC1 institutions and governance to work on democracy, enlargement, treaty change. Because my Europe is not a Europe, for instance, where enlargement talks have been going on since for 10 years now, and Albania is still let at the door, for instance. The second political commission would be internal European affairs, because, hey, I think that we are all convinced that political topics that interest youth are not only youth matters. We are concerned about rule of law, democratic participation. We are concerned about social Europe, about fiscal Europe. We're concerned about energy, climate change. These are all topics this PC could tackle. External affairs and global governance. Moritz talked about an external crisis for the last question, but we have also to define a better stance on defense, climate diplomacy, as per what we discussed in this year Vento 10 International Seminar. And basically, we need external outputs to include youth voices. For task forces, I wouldn't change much except create 2 new ones. I'd like for TF advocacy to turn into, of course, task force Euroscepticism / coordination of a Reclaim the Narrative campaign. And for that, I would also suggest that it tackles media training on top of that, and it tackles counter disinformation efforts. Second, the second change is to create a task force that is led between EB members, FC members, but secretariat members, notably the admin and financial officer position I'd like to transform into Deputy Secretary General. For training sections to create their own projects, I'd like to do financial literacy and to support sections to come up with their own ideas on top of supporting them with microgrants and other European funds Jeff Europe is used to securing, because we have talents and I'd like to give them the floor. But this task force would only be a bit about brainstorming for projects that matter to Jeffers and not about writing them, which is EB and Secretariat duties.
Thank you. I have around 2-3 questions more before we go into the audience, because we need to have more time for the people also to ask some questions. I detected to both of you, a criticism towards some of the European Union initiatives. Alexian, you spoke about the defense and the program of defense in the EU that needs to, be a bit revised. And you, Moritz, also talked about migration pact. It will be a small question, this. So you have around 1 minute, let's say, to answer. What is the main problem that the European Union faces today? I know that this is not a question that you should be answered to for 1 minute, but in the sake of the argument, you have 1 minute to answer what is the main problem or that the European Union faces in 21st century, the first quarter of the 21st century. And if you were a president of Jeff, what would be the actions that need to be addressed? I'll give you 2 minutes because I have the same. 2 minutes. I think Moritz goes now, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yes, I can
I'm
start.
not. Okay.
He answered
Okay.
first,
So,
no?
but
But go ahead, Moritz, if you want to go ahead.
I don't want to do that because I cannot remember all the time who spoke first. So let me see. I think Alexian is about
last.
to be first. You spoke last, yeah,
I
exactly.
spoke
You
last,
go
yes.
first. You go. Thank you and sorry.
Okay, I would say that the biggest challenge is that Europe has a strong common market, but is a geopolitical dwarf. So right now we are in between 2 blocks, let's say in a simplistic way, the US versus China. And because we are not a federal union, we don't have a common foreign policy. We don't have a common stance on a federal army, and I still don't believe, contrary to what I read on the networking chat, but simply having the integrated military command of the NATO would be enough. No, we need a federal army, first volunteer-based and then professionally based. I would say that because of all of this, then we cannot seriously tackle climate change issues. And because we cannot impose our innovative solutions to decarbonize the economy, Copenhagen is one of the good examples of a capital city that is on the right path to reach its emission targets, but we cannot impose it to Australia, to China, or the US. Second, then consequential issue is that because we're not federal union, we have social and fiscal dumping within the union, creating a huge sense of unfairness between European citizens. We don't have a minimal wage. If I had to work as a French to Belgium, I'm constrained by laws. And who even remembers when the discussion about a minimal or wage between Eastern and Western Europe started? I don't remember. Same for environmental norms. The farmers are angry because there are discrepancies. What are we waiting to have a federal union to tackle all of these very concrete and daily life issues?
Maybe just a short note, there was many people asking in the chat that people want to join.
I think
Yeah,
more
they were added. They were added.
Okay, then I will continue because we have time concerns. I think that in the EU right now, we have a crisis of humanity. And that comes really clear when you look to the Mediterranean. More than 2,000 people last year died again when they tried to illegally enter the European Union because they were forced to. It was not that they decided, okay, I want to break the law. I'm gonna be an illegal alien. I'm gonna go and enter Europe illegally. It's because many of these people see no other way. They see no other choice to save their life, and they are pressured often by criminal gangs and organizations to go onto boats in the Mediterranean that sink way too often and that, quite frankly, are often pushed back by Frontex, an EU organization. So I would say that this crisis of humanity, as I said it, this is something that we will have to talk about, and I am hopeful, or I was hopeful, that with the Common Migration and Asylum Pact, that for the first time in a long time kind of moved a bit away from this Dublin II approach, having this saying like, okay, the member state where migrants arrive is responsible, but saying, okay, we need to collectively share also solidarity in a way. That unfortunately now this start of a compromise is now open again. And I'm very critical because we see that, well, we also have an aging population in Europe, and I hate to bring this practical argument, but we need migration so much. And through our policies in deterring migrants, we really give a terrible image to the world. And now, because I chose this one, I really want to underline that I don't like to play one topic against the other. Of course, European defense, fighting climate change
Please conclude.
is well important. Thank you.
Thank you. So in this campaign, I guess you discussed and you consulted a lot of people around you, and you talked with task forces maybe, and colleagues of yours and other members of the JEF. The question is, what did you learn from this campaign trip, from your consultants, from the discussions and the debates that you have in this campaign? Yeah, and I think Moritz has the same.
You mean the talks we had in terms of the campaign or in JEF in general?
What did you learn from the people? This is my main question. What did you learn from the people that you spoke to? What is the main thing that they want to be solved, they want to be addressed? What is the main fear of
Yes.
Europeans, let's say?
I mean, I'm going to give two answers. Like the first one is more like on the organizational capacities. And I think that we, as many other organizations that are based and rely on volunteer involvement, struggle to find members that are really pushing our agenda. And this is also because being a volunteer is very difficult, especially when you do it in like a big group, because and I'm coming to my point, there's a lot of work to be done, and not always everyone likes the work that needs to be done. And I would really come to a point where everyone feels empowered to do their own ideas and put their own ideas into practice. Because as we rely on volunteers, those volunteers should also have fun doing what they do for Jeff, and they shouldn't feel like, oh, we need to carry out this project because we've carried out this project for years. So we have to find someone that carries out this project. No, we should ask the people, okay, what do you actually want to do? And then say, okay, we used to do it like this. We carried out this project in the last few years. How can we maybe also change it so that you as a Jeff member are actually having fun and you see like the added value? Then what I learned also in this campaign is that we really, really have to talk about finances, and we really have to look how in this environment that we are in right now, where there's increased pressure on NGOs, where there's increased pressure on organizations such as ours, that we make sure that we exist in 50 years still. And key to that is having healthy finances. And if we look to the sections, we can already see solutions, how sections projectify their own ideas, how sections collaborate with private donors, for example, with political foundations to diversify a bit the financial means. And also one thing I learned more recently, also with the cooperation in the Peace Forum, when you have a topic that is very current and moves many people, donation campaigns can also work. We raised 4,500 euros through a donation campaign, which I think is definitely something. And we need to continue thinking about these maybe non-standard ways of financing our operations. And we need to plan ahead on this. Thanks.
I would summarize what I learned during this campaign preparation first as people always wondered what are the added values of Jeff Europe, because sometimes our role at the European level is not exactly understood. In some of the candidates' manifesto, I read that they want to put forward ideas that are already existing, but then I wondered, why is it not known? So one of the added values of Jeff Europe is that we have this beautiful network, and coordination is ensured to empower sections to give more financial means through microgranting, for instance, and give the network a political voice in every event we are invited to or every platform. For instance, I was part of the Youth Advisory Council to the president of the European Social and Economic Forum, Council, sorry. So it was a beautiful forum to speak Jeff voices. Was it known? Not really. So once again, the added values of Jeff Europe were mentioned, and I learned that friendships are extremely important. So that's why we need to keep all the twinnings and mentorship program in between sections, because sections supporting sections is what makes Jeff Europe Jeff. The second thing is that I also understood that there's a bit of a concern about Jeff's political platform, and that some sections do not feel aligned or even fearful. That broke my heart. So the commitment to defending transpartisanship is truly what I learned and what I will abide by. That's why I chose also to talk about Euroscepticism, because the political landscapes in all 37 sections are extremely different. And once again, I restate, I don't want a one-size-fits-all solution because of all of what I learned. I learned also that sections would respect what the president would do with their time, given that everyone understands Jeff Europe acts under severe financial constraints. And my decision to run full-time only if financial stability is ensured was praised. I am ready to be yet again a volunteer as long as we doesn't receive the operating grants paid until April or May 2025. And this concrete details shows also how sections understands that at the European level, we are doing our best to coordinate sections, but we are doing a lot with very few people. Hence, the proposal to open up a statutory reform about the number of board members, the number of projects we can do, and also the structure of the secretariats.
So we'll have one more question, but I don't know if this question you want to be answered now, or you want to go to the questions, because it's 9:50. We can have 30 minutes of questions from the audience, and then we can come back for a closure. Is that okay for you, or you want to have a question now and go to? It's your choice.
We can do it quickly and then go to the questions.
Okay, great. So this is a question a bit different, because it will not be for both of you, but it's not provocative one. So I will read you some of the quotes that you have, or the visions you have from the website of the Young European Federalists, and I want you to elaborate on that. So you will have around, okay, we'll do it 4 minutes each, and then we'll go to the questions of the public. So Alex Young, I think no, who started first? Is
I spoke last, so I'm supposed to start.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a kind of thing there. So Alexian, you have stated in the website, in your vision, that my vision for Jeff Europe over the next 2 years can be summed up in 3 words: stronger, smarter, and more united. You have 4 minutes, I'm sorry, to elaborate on that, and we then go to Moritz, where Moritz, I will make you the question so people can hear what you have started, and then you will ask the question.
I have the impression to be back when I'm 17. I have 2 hours to answer the philosophical question about happiness or anything. So, why should Jeff be smarter, stronger, more united after 2 years? Thanks for the question. I think it's a good summary of all the ideas they put forward tonight, and also a bit the inspiration and the spark I hope to inspire in Kieran Jeffers, but also new Jeffers, because we need to be stronger, to be more heard at the advocacy level, on the advocacy side. We need to be represented in all EU institutions, to have a voices there, and to do that, we need to have a threshold. We need to reach more than 10,000 members, and especially we need to be fueled by diversity. We need to be inclusive towards young professionals, towards people coming from rural areas or high school students. We need to be more diverse also in terms of countries. We are not covering the whole of the European continent, continental countries. So that's a new challenge. If we really show a pan-European network, propelled, driven by federalist ideas, but that are concrete and that are also offering solutions to deadlock, standstill, the impression that our rights are not advancing forward, then we are also stronger and we are more united. I would also say that we, after 2 years of these ideas, enhanced collaboration between the sections and also with the FC, the EB, more horizontal, more transparency, more communication. I would say that we would more smartly use all of the experiences and talents I've been referring to. I am humbled when I'm hearing activists from Georgia or Ukraine telling me about what their daily life is, or when fighting for democracy. Same as for the Serbian who had the courage to testify yesterday at the event at the office. I have a bias. I come from Western Europe. Jeff Europe makes me grow, and I dare say it, a bit smarter, when understanding that the history I've been told about Europe is not exactly the one that is taught in other countries. So we have experiences and also this richness of having grown in different environments, but being united by one simple goal: to also have better rights, as I said. What I mean by experience is that we have people who can draft a whole resolution on the fiscal and monetary union. We have other people who have expertise in civic education or capacity building on how to make an Erasmus project approved on the first time it is submitted. With the third campaign axis, faces and experiences of Jeff, I just hope that we are more connected, united, and stronger to work smarter and to be more powerful in our advocacy. That's why I wrote these 3 messages. To do so, you need to be stirred up by a leader who cares, but who is bold with their federalist belief, who is ambitious for the network, ambitious in terms of media coverages, in terms of campaigns, in terms of impacts, in terms of how many stakeholders are convinced by our ideas. And I hope that tonight and in any other instance we had the occasion to talk, that national delegates are convinced that I could be one of this person.
Thank you, Alexia. So I'm going to Moritz now. You're stating in your message in the website of Jeff, my vision is a Jeff Europe that is courageous. A movement, that not only defends Europe's freedom, but builds the institutions to secure them for the next generations. Please elaborate. You have 4 minutes.
I am thinking of 2 things with this sentence. I think we have to be courageous looking at, and I'm thinking of Ukraine, where bombs are falling. I'm thinking about Moldova, where Russian disinformation is so big you can't even realize what's the real headline anymore. And I'm looking at Georgia, where I was quickly before the last elections, I was very hopeful that the regime would not persist, but unfortunately, they are still governing with unfair policies, and they are basically the Russian propagandists, you know? And for this, like looking at the political realities and how people have to wake up every day with these situations, we have to be courageous. We, as the EU and as Europeans, we cannot stand with them and tell them like, okay, this is horrible, we have to do something. You know, we actually have to do something. There's a lot of empty words coming from European leaders in these terms, and quite frankly, I'm very disappointed that we are losing so many of our partners there. You know, we and that's what I mean with courageous. We also need to see clear politics of support for democracy, for the rule of law, for a free media in these countries. And we have to take a courageous stand to also to say that values matter and our values are non-negotiable. We see it again with the case of Serbia, for example. In Serbia, Vucic, who is, he was information minister under Milosevic. He is in power now, and still the EPP is listing SNS party as their partner organization, So it's our job as young European federalists to talk with these members of EPP party and tell them, look, we can no longer take you seriously if you do not stand up for the values and you keep siding with a regime that attacks the core foundations of this European democracy, European freedoms. So what we mean by that is that we shouldn't be scared of political decision makers, to tell them also in the face that we disagree with their policies. And they have said publicly, like the European People's Party, I think, is the one that is really deciding things at the moment in Brussels. And many of them are federalists. Many of them are actually on our side. And I think it's our job to remind them that they are a pro-European force and that they also need to act pro-European. And this is also a bit the beauty of our movement. We can talk to many different political leaders, be it the socialists, the Greens, the conservatives, And in the end, all of them agree with our basic values, and reminding them to join the fight with us and to not switch the camp and go with ECR, with the Patriots, or whatever trash there is, even worse. I think this is really what we have to do. We have to remind them of their pro-European promises, and concretely also for us in Jeff Europe, we really have to look out for the sections in Ukraine, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Serbia. How can we support them
Please
to
conclude.
continue their fight at home? Thank you.
Thank you. So the main debate, I think now it's over. We can proceed to the questions, which will be around 35 minutes. The questions from the audience, I think the best way maybe is you can take the floor actually from the members, and you can unmute yourself and you can ask a question, and we'll wait. Okay, we have one question from the chat. Okay, nice, thank you. So we have a question from Benedetta Fenerusso. How do you envision in practical terms the collaborative process with EB and FC? What type of leadership approach do you feel suits you best? So I think Moritz can take the floor. You see the question also in
Yes.
the great, so you can answer it. You have 2 minutes. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to proceed. Thank you.
So, from my point of view as international officer in the last mandate, there was a lot of dissatisfaction between FC and EB not working together, and I would really like to change that. I think to have a strong Jeff, we need a Jeff that is operable and that understands itself as one family working together, no matter if you're an EB member or an FC member. Of course, the roles and portfolios are different, but we should see the people first and not the position. In practical terms, what I propose is to invite the presidium of the FC in like a rotating form to EB meetings to ensure that the FC is informed of what is being decided and what's going on at EB meetings. If there's anything that is confidential and has to be taken for whatever reasons, that, to be honest, for me right now not seems so clear, but if there's a way and you can really not tell FC members something, then I think we will also find a solution. But we really need this direct communication between EB and FC, and we also need to understand that even though EB and FC are different bodies, we are one group of activists that should pull on the same side. And in terms of leadership approach, I already said it a bit before. I want to empower each and every Jeff member, be it if they're in an elected position or just a member. If they have an idea, my first answer would always be, yes, you have my support, let's do it. And because we need to give agency also to people, I don't want to micromanage. As long as we stay within the code of conduct and as long as we stay within our political priorities, and I don't want to stand in the way of any initiative.
Thank you.
So I would say that one of the frustration that came from this mandate and was also well summarized by Moritz is that EB and FC, we had this impression that we didn't know also the limits of our role and who had precedence over what. We even heard the term who controls what, etc. So as discussed with other FC candidates, I would like to starts also with Presidium, FC Presidium, and Vice President/President meeting, where we would agree on a common phrasing to ask the arbitration board on how to interpret the statutes on this working relation. But that being said, I think that mine is very horizontal. I'd like to have monthly calls that are going to be set up from the beginning of the mandate with the FC Presidium. And once a month, on top of these monthly calls, we could have, or bi-monthly, if we have strong campaigns, which I hope Reclaim the Narrative would be. I would like to invite PC or task force chairs to present one of the initiatives they are working with. I think that I would do my best also, and I would encourage board members to shed light on the initiatives of FC members, be them task force calls or political commission calls with a advocacy calendar, or even simply a calls calendar where we could share it with the network. Lastly, I would say that my leadership is, as you can see, very much committed to defend consultation, empathy as well. I just hope that everyone is very clear that when we commit to doing something, if we cannot do it because it's life and we're volunteers, then we should just simply say it so that we can also cover for each other, because we are a team no matter what.
Thank you both. We have some more questions, as you can see also in the chat. We have one from Abdullah from Estonia, which is for both of you. The concept of working horizontally was mentioned. Can you give examples of how you work horizontally currently, and how you will do it in the future? How would you support the people around you and resolve differences of opinion? So it's a two-leg question. Alexian, you have the floor in 2 minutes.
I think that it's also connected to the question from Benedetta, so I thank you both. I think that I'd like to give more ideas then. Working horizontally, I think I can give examples of how I worked with the sections I was contact person to. So with some of them, I had chats, WhatsApp chats, and I would exchange information, ask questions, and answer as fast as I can. But horizontally means also having regular sections calls, something I will not compromise in, and invite board members to not compromise in. In any case, I think that the president should check monthly with other presidents on top of the informal council of presidents that I'd like to suggest and I talked about before. How do I see it in the future? Well, I would not like to change it. I would still be the same person, except that I would have more external representation and more important role of leader. I have the principle of listening before triggering any formal procedure in case of conflict. I prefer very much picking up the phone rather than spreading rumors or making sure that some people know you're dissatisfied, but not me. So if there's a conflict, we gather, we talk about it in person or on the phone. If we do not solve it, then we try to find a compromise. If there's no compromise, then there are procedure, but I would like to say that some sections ask me to also revise the way code of conduct procedures are being triggered. So that will be subject to a consultation as well.
To answer, I actually think we should work way more vertically, if I understand this concept really well, because for me, saying like I would only work horizontally would mean that I would only contact other presidents that are kind of on the same level, and that is really not my how I see it. I think that across the movement, we need way more debate and also exchange of ideas. No matter if it's like on the local level, on the national level, on European level, like the single members, for me, there's no difference. So I would really like to focus more on this vertical approach, actually, that there's no distinction between certain levels. In the end, we're all the same. And maybe one concrete way where I would also like to empower this decision making for sections and then also small sections is this reintroduction of the International Officers Network, to have this as an informal decision making gremium to convene about every 2 months, to kind of see a bit like what is happening in the sections and what is also happening in Jeff Europe, and to organize a bit. And this would also help to give more representation to the smaller sections, because it would be one person, one country, one person that represents it there. And now that I was also talking about this vertical coordination, one last point also, Jeff Europe should not only communicate with the national sections and the boards of the national sections, but it should also establish direct contacts with the various local Jeff groups that exists. So because also the local groups, I mean, especially coming from Germany, they are also important, and we need to include them also in Jeff Europe, not only the national sections.
Thank you both. We'll go to the third question. It's from Konstantin. It says, how will you as president ensure inclusivity and equal representation of all sections, particularly during statutory events such as the Congress, given that the Solidarity Fund is not currently allocated to support national delegates from country being in ongoing war? And then we have another 3 questions. Okay. Moritz, you have the floor.
I'm not informed about the specifics of this case, but I know that, or at least how I see the Solidarity Fund in the past, is also that it seems to be a competition of like who has the saddest story to win the Solidarity Fund. And for me, this doesn't seem like a very legitimate way to distribute the Solidarity Fund. I think it should be way more transparent in how the Solidarity Fund is actually allocated. One thing that is key to that, I guess, is developing a bit of a risk profile for each of the sections. We have the membership survey where we ask each section, like, what risks are you experiencing in your daily life, and also what financial capacities do you have? I think this, having the membership survey as a bit of a basis on to assess like the financial liabilities of Jeffers coming from a certain country, and also assessing their risks towards political violence, etc., would help already in general assessing who really needs the Solidarity Fund. And I already stated that the new sections that we are hopefully voting for in the Congress, they will definitely deserve the most attention from me as president in the next mandate, because we need to ensure that they really stay operable and they stay a core part of our movement.
Same as Moritz, I don't know the details. So in any case, for that matter right now, until the end of this mandate, I suggest that the Solidarity Fund Committee is approached. And I'm sorry that this fuels negative feelings. That being said, since I would like to establish a task force on projects and linking capacity building, making sure that sections also know how to create more projects and projectify, it means that I would like also to keep projectifying our statutory events, meaning that part of these statutory events would be devoted to conducting an activity that is part of a campaign or a project by SERV or Erasmus+. And this would allow to cover people coming from specific countries. So then my logical answer would be also to increase the number of projects that are being carried out between Jeff Europe and its sections, especially with Eastern sections or non-EU sections, which are covered, for instance, by the Erasmus Plus scheme. This is a very practical thing. The second thing is like I'd like to increase the private funding with some political foundations, still respecting transpartisanship, so that we can increase also the private funds which are not targeting one specific activity or one specific goal, and that can cover for more money to be allocated to Solidarity Fund, with the criteria that also sections which do not have access to European or institutional funds are prioritized, and that's a commitment. I'd like also to say that there is the case where we can also hear from these sections ideas as well. And I would be happy to start doing that from tomorrow on if you have additional doable solutions that can be implemented quickly.
Let's go to the other question where Nia Maria is asking to describe the other candidate's main strengths. So, Alexian, can you describe the main strengths of Moritz? You have 2 minutes.
I'd
Thank you.
like to say that although we disagree on the term horizontal communication, I see horizontal communication doing or having an example, doing basically the open communication we had with Moritz since the beginning of May, where we talk or see each other every 2 weeks or every month. We kind of update each other on how do we see our priorities, and although we disagree on the term Euroscepticism or far right, we are both the enemies of nationalists and the strong advocates of federalism. So for me, working horizontally is what I'm doing with him, and I think that's basically one of the strengths. I would like also to acknowledge that, and this is very sincere, when we had a political discussion in Ventotene at night, it was really important for me to understand that no matter the outcome of this election, I really enjoy talking about politics and vision with Moritz. We are really having strong common points about some elements we want to see in the future EU, and we can fuel or learn from each other, although we are in these competitive elections. I also opened to him as to the rumors I was hearing there and about, and thanks to constructive discussions, he managed also to um, put an end and also to reaffirm his commitment to less gossiping and more debate of ideas. That's why today I consider it's a frank success.
Thank you, and I agree with you completely. And I think that with maybe then we are a good example for the whole movement now, for the future also. But look, Alexian, what I really like about you and what I think is your biggest strength is you're very eloquent and you're really good at selling federalism. Like I really want to tell you that, and I think that would be a good skill also towards decision makers.
Thank you. Let's go to the other question where we have from Anna. She says, how do you see your role as president vis-a-vis the secretariat members? How does that role differ from the one of Secretary General? Moritz, you have the floor in 2 minutes.
I have not been like a little mouse spying how the work in the secretariat is going on right now. And so obviously, if I get elected, my first duties in the secretariat would be to get to know all the members. I know some of them, but not all of them so well. As I would be in Brussels permanently, this would definitely be a bit of a change in how Secretary General and President work together. I would like to give this commitment that we should keep all the staff that are now in the Secretariat. We are actually under the new operating grant structure obliged to have 5 members as staff all the time. And this promise, yeah, needs to be given also from my side, that we need to do everything to keep everyone happy also in the secretariat and keep everyone wanting to continue the work, the important work that they're doing there already. With the Secretary General, I mean, I would have to have a very frank conversation on what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what do we want to do. In the end, both of us should be happy with the tasks that we assign to each other. And yeah, we need like a close collaboration, coordination. And yes, basically, I see the big difference more in like the political and representation work, and then also more in like the organizational, financial capacity work. But if there is help needed, if it's filming an Instagram video, if it's cleaning the dishes, if it's I don't know, calling someone from like another organization, I will do whatever is needed in any moment.
So one key difference I see between the President and Secretary General, on top of what Moritz says, I think that we agree on that, on his vision. Um, the Secretary General is in charge of the management. So the president is just making updates and regular checks on how things are progressing. But the president also orientates and give the directions and also the priorities for the projects, for the applications, etc. So one thing I would like to emphasize again is that secretariat members are not simply meant to execute the task given by the board. They, under my leadership, they would have a right also to suggest new projects, ideas, new collaborations with UEF, European Movement International. I'm also thinking of maybe proposing to have a more stronger cooperation with these movements in terms of staff, in terms of how do we share our offices, how do we advocate together, how do we share our contact database, etc., etc. I would be starting from day one in Brussels, 2 days a week, until the decision can be made on the full-time presidency. So I have this chance of living in Paris whenever something happens. I told every Secretary General that I'm 1 hour and 20 minutes by train away. And at the same time, this decision to be in Brussels on the regular same days would not only allow me to do the external representation, but also build a strong tie with the Secretariat and also empower them to also share their ideas with me, with the Secretary General, and also to give perspective on how the Secretariat members' organization should be reformed. I have this idea of a Deputy Secretary General. Let's see how they think about it, notably.
Thank you. The next question, and it's my decision in the chat, is not going to be answered by both candidates. I think it's a purely ideological question that does not need to be answered right now in this debate, because this debate about Jeff and it's not about uh, political ideology in that sense. So Konstantin Petri, Mr. Konstantin Petri, you can ask both candidates maybe in private at some point. You can have a chat with them to answer your question about this. And we're going to Benedetta Veneruso again, who is saying that you both have a lot of experience in Jeff, and of course, as we're all volunteers, we're learning from experience, good and bad. Looking back at your journey, Jeff, is there anything you would have done differently? Something you have learned about yourself along the way? And Alexian, you have the floor in 2 minutes.
I think for the first minute, I'm gonna say that when I was international officer at Jeff UK, I would have loved to better know what Jeff Europe was so that I could take part in more statutory events or international projects. That's why I'm committed to set in place this communication on social media and WhatsApp about what the board, the FC Presidium, the Secretary General do, so that people are more informed about what the European level does, but also to have this communication calendar updated and synchronized with VFC and sections. I would have, this is a commitment coming from Jeff Europe, but then international officers' role is also very important when it comes to making time to have an update with their EB body, and that they commit also to pass down the information. Jeff Europe level cannot just be blamed here. Although the statutes limit us on how much Jeff Europe can get in touch with local sections, we mandatorily need to ask for national sections approval. I think that these two initiatives would empower sections to take part in more international events. And then in return, I would have been more open towards other international officers, because I think that twinnings is really one of the added values I was talking about earlier, having the chance to apply with different sections to create a project. Second thing, when I was EB member, I think that I learned even more how to work with different cultures and how uh, people see differently their commitment, their volunteering approach, their time. So if I can reflect, I think that notably would I put even more emphasis on feedback, but I would also just acknowledge that we are different and we need to communicate our differences. So um, I would verbalize more what I'm expecting from the other to see from the start if we can work together, and if not, how we can adapt to each other.
To answer the question of Benedetta, I think, and it's a bit of a common thing, like when I look back when I was editor-in-chief of Treffpunkt Europa, I was very much thinking in this mindset of like, okay, our newsroom, and it was very much in this national bubble in a way. And then also as international officer, it took me a long time to realize that there is this huge network and it's super easy to activate it and use it. And I think in both of these roles, it has taken me it has taken me some time at least to really integrate all of the great activists that we have all over the continent, because in the end it's sometimes only sending a WhatsApp message in the networking channel saying like, hey, we're planning to a project on this topic, blah blah blah, and then you already have some people that are possibly interested in joining. But yes, so I think looking back, I would have had a bit more confidence sometimes, to actually reach out to more sections and to make things more international.
Going to the last question in the chat, you have around 10-15 minutes more, so you can answer any questions that you may have. So Gergana asks, what does federalism mean to you, Moritz?
Federalism for me is something that came into my life, and I'm going to be honest, more recently. I studied European studies, and I think in my whole 3 years in this Bachelor of European Studies, the word federalism, it never really came so much. Like we were talking about multi-level governance and like different forms of governance, but federalism as a concept is something that I discovered through Jeff, and it's been a very valuable discovery because federalism is a platform in the end. Federalism is a platform where we can unify different challenges, like the struggle for emancipation of women, the struggle for a society that is free from discrimination. When we look at this social gap, there's so many people that struggle buying like the necessities they need for their own life, foodstuffs, medication, and federalism in the end is a promise that we're all the same, and that under this umbrella of federalism, that's what I mean, federalism is a tool that we can use to unite also different actors. For example, I proposed also to build a civil society alliance on Schengen. And in the end, Schengen is one of the great examples of how federalism can work in practice, because countries decide, okay, we are working together and there is an actual added value for the citizens because they can travel where they want to go. And I think this is also a bit now the challenge for us ahead to tell what federalism actually means, that it's a shared power for all in a way, and to leverage this understanding of federalism to gain more partners and also introduce them to this idea of federalism.
Thank you, Alexian.
Can you hear me? Yes. I would say that federalism means to me, it means to be bold. Bold in a time where we have growing frustrations, where we talk about polycrisis of the EU, and us, federalists, are bold enough to say that we envision a different political structure. We envision a European Parliament that gives much more power to the MEPs when it comes to making EU legislation. A commission that is more accountable. The council, which is not the place to be only, and that all commission, council, and the parliament equally share the power when it comes to making legislation. We want to have also more space for the civil society organization to share their experiences and to share the knowledge they have when making society together. I very much agree with Moritz when he says that Fadulism is reminding everyone that we are all alike, human, flesh and bones. I would say that Fadulism is bold also to remind that we can construct a future where the EU's decisions are not superheaded by or driven by just two founding members, where expertise on some topics come from different parts of Europe. And that, by saying that, I know very much that I'm French. So that's a critic against how I envision France and how I don't understand their opposition right now to federalism.
Thank you. We're going to Patrick, where he asks about the financial things of Jeff. He says that we face a situation where we have to down some costs, given that there's a grant or multiple grants that we don't receive. We don't have the equity to cover for potential large losses. So where would you prioritize to cut down costs, and what would you prioritize? Other comments about handling such a situation? Because this is something that we didn't touch upon on the main debate that I asked some questions. You can have 3 minutes to answer this question about the financial, uh, the finances of Jeff. So you can see the question also on the chat. You have 3 minutes. Alexian, you can start.
Thank you very much. That question warms my grant writer heart. Okay, time to be serious. The first thing is I don't want to cut on staff cost because I think that having 5 staff members is crucial, not only to fulfill the requirement for the operating grant, but also because the positions are extremely complementary. Secretary General, Financial Admin Officer / Deputy Secretary General, if that's a reform to be made. Second, 2 jobs for project officer, membership and comms, and then also the policy officer, who is really crucial to ensure the coherence between the political orientations decided by the board, applying the political platform of the network, and all the statutory decisions made. And all of the advocacy work that we are doing with group Vispanili Group, Civil Society Europe, Youth, European Youth Forum, etc., etc. So I would cut rent costs, and that is currently an option. We are moving out, so the president will be responsible for ensuring this moving out to happen well and also to assess the costs. I would like also to strengthen the capacity of the auditors to have a look at Jeff financial situation, to have trimestrial calls if they are available, and to also share with the Secretary General regular emails, more updates on the projects that we will have. So financial transparency also as a first step towards realistic projections of all the costs. Jeff Europe is a big machine. And then there's the discussion also of how to have own resources, membership fees, private funding. So I've already expanded on my private funding ideas and fundraising opportunities. I'd like to say also that the membership fee discussion should be revived because sections do not agree. Yet I would say that sections who drastically lose members 1 year should have also a solidarity period where the membership fee is being lightened so that they can rebound. And the last thing is my personal commitment. I will once again say that I will not be selfish and run full-time if Jeff Europe's finances are not strong enough. And for that, we will need to secure the operating grant, and we will have a definitive answer in April 2026.
Thank you. As for the finances, I know that the finances are at the core of this whole debate, because if we don't have the money to do the things we want to do, we cannot do them. As someone who is not right now in Jeff Europe, it is a challenge for me to assess from the outside the finances. However, I think that in the last year or so as international officer, I have done my best to actually understand and realize what is also maybe not going to the best in terms of the finances as Jeff Europe level. I think that in general, civil society organizations are in a very dangerous spot, because unfortunately the political landscape is turning against independent organizations such as ours. And I think before coming to the specifics, it is my conviction that we should not give in and bow down to this crackdown on civil society organizations, but we have to fight for our spaces. And that also means that we will apply for the projects that we want to do and that we see necessary. But there are definitely points where we can cut costs. You mentioned the office. That would also be a big priority for me, to move to an office that is much cheaper, and put the expenses that we have to the test. I know that this is not ideal, but we have to see if we can move more projects also online. I already said that Jeff Europe has a coordinating role, and so I think many of the meetings have to happen online, unfortunately. With Anna running as treasurer, I would really like to focus on how we can find more sources of income through projects. I know this projectification is not sexy, but it is unfortunately one of the few ways for us to carry out projects and also secure funding for statutory events. For the membership fees discussion, some of you know that in the very beginning, I was actually very much in favor of raising the membership fees, because I was thinking that, okay, for 10 years, we didn't touch this. I now also see that this puts small sections very much under pressure. And the added value from 1 or 2 euros more per member is for Jeff Europe quite limited. However, Alexian, I think that actually putting out like discounts for certain sections is a bit of a terrible example, because it could lead to like a domino effect, where then all sections say, okay, but like if section A or section B is not paying membership fees, why do we pay membership fees? So I would really like to enter in this constructive dialogue with all sections to see what can they do more, but really stay with this 2 euros per member that we have right now.
Yeah. So Alexian wants to answer, I guess, from this response. Okay, I will give you 1 minute and a half. Is
30
that okay?
seconds. 30 seconds is enough.
Okay.
I think that you misinterpreted my words. It's no discount when suddenly you decrease from more than 100 members. This is a situation which has happened to already 2 sections this year, and I think that you know one of them very well. So I'd like to give breathing room. And it's no discount. It's fact-based on loss of membership and also a temporary situation. And I have never spoken about a permanent discount.
Do you want Moritz to answer to that, or you
Thanks for the
want to-
clarification. Thanks.
Okay, great. So I think we've concluded this debate, if because there are some questions that cannot be answered right now, and we also want to thank all the people that have made the questions in this debate. There is another one question now that I'm saying about the ideas to decrease to tackle the decrease in member space by many sections at the moment. It's the one that also has been mentioned right now, if I'm not mistaken, right? You answered this question about the membership. So Laura, yes, they have answered. So if there's anything else, any other question that is about Jeff, not about the political ideologies or orientation of the candidates, we can close this debate. And
And there's some questions that received a lot of hearts, so maybe we can prioritize these.
If
yes,
you're
but yeah, please, Alexian.
if you're fine, I don't know, Moritz, if you need a final statement, but maybe we can mix the last questions and answer. But one question about the biggest mistake we already answered. So I think it should be just three final questions.
Okay. I just think that some of the questions are not so much aligned with the Jeff election. So this is my opinion, not to be answered, but I can go with it. No, I can go with it. I can give you, let's say, 7 minutes until 10 and 10. It's a bit more of 2 minutes, but yeah. I can ask the question about what will you do in Jeff if you lose the election for president, and I think Moritz has this first word on this. Yeah. No?
If I lose the election, I will still remain an active part of Jeff, but I'm campaigning to be president, and so I will not run for any other role.
Alexian?
As part of our tradition to communicate openly with Moritz, we have tackled this topic, and the decision is not made yet. One thing is clear for me, so I would like to bridge the gap between the mandates, even if I lose. Now, in what capacity, it's very much unclear also. And the thing is that is certain is that I think that we have a duo of very strong VP candidates. So I've already communicated to all sections that I will not run as VP.
If you're okay, the two candidates can proceed with the general conclusion of the night, and they can have around 3 minutes to make a final statement in front of the people that they are watching you. So, Alexian, you can start with a final statement. You have 3 minutes, and Moritz will proceed, and then we conclude this debate. If you're okay with this, you can start.
I'm gonna start
Together,
by answering. Sorry. Go ahead, Alexian. I'm sorry.
No, sorry, Moritz, what is this? What did you want to say to Alexian?
I thought you gave the floor to me. I'm sorry. But
No,
it's
because you
Alexian, it's your
answered.
turn.
You answered first in the last question, and now Alexian has the floor, and you after 3 minutes you'll be okay. Sorry, Alexian.
no problem. So my final words would be first to state that I'm really convinced that together we can shape a Europe that acts and delivers, which is a key theme of today's discussion for rights, democracy, and freedoms. I have a story in Jeff. I have a story outside of Jeff too. So I'm a grant writer employed by the Minister of Higher Education as well. So I have two status. I'm very engaged at my local level, politically speaking, to bring the European ideas in the local territories, and then again do the other way around, bring territories' voices to the EU to never lose ground with reality. So if I humbly ask for your national delegate support tonight, it's also because after 6 years of experiences in Jeff, I consider that I have necessary skills, and I wondered for a long time before making this decision after actually a couple of months. And my decision has been strengthened because of all the section's ideas and all the opportunities I got from learning from section members. So together we constructed a roadmap. I didn't think that I would have done the opposite, coming with a program and expecting sections to believe me. That's not what I am doing or the person I am. So through this consultation, I really see that together we have this understanding that federalism is not a concept in the air confined to textbooks. It is really a living solution to the challenges that our generation faces. I'm then running to make our federalist dream more tangible, visible, and achievable with external representation and all the contacts that I also gathered at the national and European levels with my different positions, including last year as Chief of Staff in the ministry. My dream is a federal but united Europe, bold, caring, visionary, and also acting concretely from Tbilisi to Lisbon, from Oléron to an island in Finland or Sweden or whatever territory you have in mind. I believe in a Europe that leads with purpose, with notably a fair climate change strategy building onto the Green Deal, but also one defense strategy, one competitiveness strategy built on ethical European AI, protecting our social Europe, and one clear plan for protecting democracy and making enlargement a shared reality. As someone told me in Ventotene, in any case, everything will be fine after the Congress, because together we can make Jeff the heart of a European democracy with courage, empathy, and federalist ambition.
Thank you. Moritz, you have the floor for the final statement.
Being the president of Jeff Europe would honestly be the honor of my life. And I did not have it on my bingo card to happen. But the last months have shown me, and I've talked with many amazing people in our movement, that I want to rise up to the challenge and I want to be there for every Jeffer, wherever they might be and whatever party line they would have. Like, because there was also the question in the chat, do you see yourself as an activist or as a politician? I can definitely answer that I see myself not as a politician. I am formally a member of the Greens in Germany, but this is in my village. I'm not really connected with them. I really want to focus our work a bit more on this activist side without losing the touch with politicians. If it helps to put on a suit to bring our argument across, I'm more than happy to do that. And I would like to be the voice of federalism and the voice of our individual members in Brussels and with the institutions to do this advocacy, because there's a lot of anger, there is a lot of fear out there, and there is a lot of distrust to democracy at large in many member countries of the EU, in many of the neighboring countries, and beyond that. And I want to bring this anger and this fear and this frustration to Brussels and voice it there. And also, we need to go where Europe hurts the most, unfortunately. A few weeks ago, I was in Albania, where Italy was building basically a migrant prison to externalize migration. You can also go to Belarus, to the border with Poland. This is all reality, you know, and unfortunately, we have to counter the threats of Russia. But we have to find a way to do it more united and to do it in a way where we can look at our politics and look at our societies and say, okay, we've tried everything. And we really have to put humans in the center of our politics and of our movement.
Thank you so much, both of you, and I'm wishing you the best luck and have a good night. And also to all of you that you're watching, thank you so much for participating in this debate. It's nice to exchange the opinions and the ideas and the visions of Europe. And I wish you all the best and good luck, and see you in the future.
Thank you. See
Thank you very
you.
much.
See you.